It's been a while, so let's make some Vietnamese food. Hey Veggies, it's Zang, and today I'm gonna share one of my favorite Vietnamese dishes, bánh cuon, which is a Vietnamese rice crepe stuffed with pork and mushrooms. It's super delicious, but I also wanted to talk about growing up Asian American in honor of May, which is Asian Pacific Heritage Month. If you guys want to see more Vietnamese or Asian recipes, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and please don't forget to give this video a like, and we'll go ahead and get started. First, we're gonna start by making the batter. It's a mix of rice flour and tapioca starch. So in a large bowl, I'm gonna add 1 cup of rice flour, and the brand of flour that I like to use is this one. I think it's called Erewhon, but the rice flour is a lot more finely milled, so you get a very smooth batter. 3/4 of a cup of tapioca flour, 2 tablespoons of cooking oil, a pinch of salt, and then I'm gonna pour 3.5 cups of warm water. There's no baking soda in here or anything like that. There's just air pockets when I dump the water in, so it's totally gonna be fine. I'm just gonna give it a mix. All right, this looks great. And now we're just gonna let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes so that the flour can really open up. And then we will get started with our filling. But first, I wanted to answer a few questions about my ethnicity. This is probably the second most asked questions after where did you get your gold rim bowls? I am Vietnamese American. I was born and raised in a little town called Santa Clara, California, up north in the Bay Area. It's not so little anymore, but when I grew up, it was like still kind of a farmland. There used to be like orange orchards in the 70s. I was born in the 80s, but this was when my parents came over, and so I would hear all the stories about that. I was born into a very middle class family. My parents immigrated over from Vietnam in 1975, and they worked super hard to kind of build their lives up here. They got married in 1978. They actually met here, and there's a funny story which I will tell you guys when I make the fish sauce, how my parents got together. I grew up there with an older sister, and at the time it was a pretty diverse town. There was enough Asians around that I felt like I belonged. I went to a school that had a good mix of kids. There were a lot of Caucasians, there were Filipinos, Vietnamese people, and I always connected with the Vietnamese kids. My dad had a rule where I was only allowed to speak Vietnamese at home, which I also think kind of messed me up. My grammar is probably bad because I just mixed the two up, and to this day, I sometimes stumble upon my words too, and Nate gets so irritated when we're filming. But I would say that Vietnamese was my first language. My dad was super adamant about keeping our culture alive. I had to go to Vietnamese school, and I went to Vietnamese school and piano lessons before I even went into kindergarten. So those were the types of Asian parents that I had. They were super strict, very big on academics. All right, let's move on to making the filling, and then I'll keep talking. So we're gonna make the filling all in this pan, and it comes together super quickly. I'm gonna drizzle a little bit of olive oil, let it get hot, and then I'll add 2 cloves of minced garlic. Let it get nice and fragrant for about a minute, and then I'll add our pork. A little over 1/2 pound here. I'll cook it down, making sure to break up any large chunks. To season it, I'll add 1 tablespoon of fish sauce, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. Mix it up. So I'm just breaking up the meat into very small pieces. You want the pork to be pretty fine in this. And then we're gonna add our vegetables. About 1 cup of finely chopped jicama, 1/2 an onion that I've also finely minced, and a cup of rehydrated wood-eared mushrooms that I've also finely minced. So wood-eared mushrooms can be kind of hard to find, but you can get them at any Asian market these days. Sometimes they're labeled black fungus, but if you really think about it, mushroom is a fungus, so I don't know why it sounds weird. This smells so good. Oh, I have to hit it with a dash of freshly ground black pepper. Let everything cook for about 3 to 5 minutes until the liquid evaporates, and then that's our filling. So like I said, my parents were just middle-class working people. My dad was a hardworking mailman, and my mom worked in tech. Actually, it was like semiconductor, and she built those little motherboards at the time. So they both worked a lot, especially during the holiday season. My dad wouldn't come home till almost like 8 sometimes. And in middle school was when I felt like I was kind of different. Because they worked so much, they didn't really have time to take us to like dance practice or soccer practice, things like that. I never got to experience. And one of the things that stood out most to me was that I was never allowed to go to birthday parties. When I asked my mom later on in life, why didn't I get to go to those things? She said, well, it's because I didn't want you to like envy other kids, which I thought was ridiculous. I'm like, that's so sad. That she didn't want me to want other things that they had because they couldn't provide that to us, so they just kind of kept us locked up. When I see my niece and nephews experiencing all these really fun things, my niece recently got to go to a 9th birthday party in this huge stretch limo where they got like makeovers and then they went out for pizza. It was funny because I told my sister we never got to experience anything like this. And I'm happy that they get to, but it's also kind of a bummer. But I mean, like I get to do all that now, so I don't feel like I'm missing out too much. So we have our filling all done. So now I'm gonna move on and show you how to make the crepe wrapper. My flour has really opened up, and I'm just gonna give it another mix so that the bottom can kind of get distributed. It's still fairly runny, which is the exact consistency that we need. So my parents didn't really lock us up, but I always felt really isolated, and my escape was always to cook. I would watch cooking shows on Saturday mornings and then try to recreate them in the kitchen afterwards. So that was my hobby, and that's kind of where I grew this passion. Unexpectedly, I guess. It was kind of forced, but not really. But I felt like I was an outsider mostly when I went to middle school. That was when you had like gang rap, or you had emo, or you had, I don't know, there was just so many things that was defined by cultural, pop culture, or musical taste. And at the time, I just liked Mariah Carey or Boyz II Men. And I mean, there were other kids that liked that too, but I wasn't grungy enough to hang out with the white kids, and I wasn't gangster enough to hang out with like the Asian kids. So I kind of felt stuck in the middle. And I remember one day I was walking my dog with my family. That's the moment I felt like I am so different. I hate my name. Why didn't you guys give me an American name? Zong. It was when that song, All I Want to Do Was a Zoom, a Zoom, a Zoom, and a Boom Boom, which doesn't even sound like my name. But I remember this group of girls, the cheerleaders, and they started singing that, kind of taunting me. Our whole family, like my parents, how disrespectful was that? But they were taunting us and singing that, and I got so fed up, I turned around and I just said, shut up, like that's not funny. And then they started, that's when like the bullying came on. Like they all started bum rushing us. They started running from all ends, from the back to the front, and my mom was so scared for me, but I'm like, it's not a big deal. I know these girls, like they're not that tough. So my mom and dad got super scared, and then they put me into Taekwondo class. I have a black belt because of that incident. That was when I really felt like I wanted to be different. I wanted to be something else. I didn't want my name. I didn't want to be so Vietnamese, so like nerdy or whatever. I wore glasses in middle school, and I went to piano lessons, and I went to Vietnamese school and all that. Like nothing that was socially integrated with my peers. It was always something else that I was doing outside, and I didn't see those kids that I went to Vietnamese school outside of Vietnamese school. So I just felt very, very isolated. And I don't know if it's like a cultural thing or if it was like a just the way that my parents raised us, but I just felt very different. I would say it wasn't until maybe late high school and college where I felt like I belonged. Although even in college, I went to a predominantly Caucasian college. It's a Jesuit school. The Asians that were there kind of stuck together, but we were pretty culturally diverse as well. I had a good mix of friends there. My best friends were not Asian. I hung out with a good group of people, and I just felt like I belonged because I was doing stuff that was interesting to me. I worked in retail. I minored in like a retail marketing thing, so like the fashion side of things always was interesting to me. I worked at Esprit, which was like the best. Did you guys ever feel like you didn't belong in high school, or that you didn't know where you fit in based on your culture or interests? So I'm gonna let my pan get hot, but not too hot. I'm gonna start by adding just a tiny bit of oil into the pan, and then with a paper towel, I'm gonna distribute it. With my ladle, I'll pour in about half a cup of batter, slide it around so that it covers the whole pan. For the wrapper, it's essential for you to use a non-stick pan because the rice flour and the tapioca flour is pretty sticky. Put it back on the heat, and then I'll cover it up for about a minute. Once it becomes nice and translucent, that's when it's ready. I'll flip the pan over directly onto my plate, and that's the crepe wrapper. The flipping over can be kind of tricky, but don't worry if it's not perfect like this one, because you're just gonna scoop a little bit of filling. I would say about 2 tablespoons, and then just put it in the thickest part of the crepe. Spread the filling out, and then I'm gonna roll it kind of like a burrito. Fold up the top, let the sides go in a little bit, and just roll her up. And that is your banh cuon. Typically when you serve a plate of this, you get maybe 5 or 6 crepes depending how large your appetite is. I went ahead and made a few already. This one broke, it's my first one. The first one is always the ugliest one. So to serve this, you always have to have nước mắm chấm or fish sauce dipping sauce. To make it in a small bowl, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar, 2 tablespoons of fish sauce, and about a third of a cup of warm water. Mix it until the sugar dissolves, and that is our fish sauce. If you guys want to add like chili paste or even fresh chili in there to make it nice and spicy, feel free to do so. But since I'm keeping this for Ethnicity to enjoy as well, we're gonna make it plain. So like I said, my mom was famous for her fish sauce, and it's something that my dad really was drawn to after meeting her at a dinner party. He wanted to marry her because she could make the most authentic tasting fish sauce. And here's the recipe, you guys, so I hope you enjoy it. As you know, I married Nate, who is half Korean, half Caucasian. It's funny because if I look back on everyone that I dated, they all happen to be half Asian, half Caucasian. But I just felt like I have more of a connection with them because I was never super Asian or I was never super like white. So when I dated a like American or like Caucasian person, I just never felt like I connected. Really, I wasn't into the same things, and just certain, like the food was the problem. Like my brother-in-law, he can't have fish sauce because he's just like, it's too smelly. And I would die if Nate couldn't eat the food that I love. So just like the food and the cultural barriers there, and then dating a full Asian, there's so many expectations with not just dating an Asian person. I did date one person that was full Chinese, but I just felt like there's so many expectations, not just within the person, but like the family, and I just wasn't cultured enough. Enter Nate, where I just felt like I was at home with him. Like I know you're filming this, so but I honestly, like it's a personality thing as well, but I just felt like I connected culturally and he understood. Like I'm not super Asian, and he teases me sometimes calling me like the Asian blonde because I'm so airheaded or whatever, but that's totally a personality thing. So for most Vietnamese dishes, you always have to have fresh veggies as a topping. Here I have some bean sprouts, some julienne cucumbers, mint, and fried shallots, which is essential for this dish. I'm gonna layer them right on top, starting with the bean sprouts, cucumbers, mint, and top it off with some fried shallots. And then I'll garnish it with a pretty piece of mint here. And since fish sauce is usually like a communal thing to enjoy, I like spooning it directly over my crepes. But if you wanted to, you could just get a small bowl like this, pour it in, and dip it. Let's do that instead. Erisi is multicultural. She's a quarter Caucasian, half Vietnamese, and a quarter Korean. So I, if I can, would really love to teach her Korean. Nate doesn't speak at all, and neither does his family, so I don't know how we're gonna do that. Rosetta Stone maybe, but every chance I get, I will speak to her in Vietnamese based on what I could remember and what I could say well. So she knows ang, she knows dingo, which is sleep, she knows Ditam. It's so cute because when I say Sisi, let's ditam, she goes ditam, ditam, and she has like this funny accent. It's so cute, but it's really important to me that she's exposed to all of our culture because that's who she is. That's the makeup of who she is. So we always go out for Korean food, so if she can't speak, at least she will enjoy the food. And we go to OC quite a bit to eat delicious Vietnamese food. Let's give it a quick taste. Dip it in the fish sauce. The crepe wrapper is so silky smooth, and I could probably work on making it a little thinner, but I am not a pro, so this is as good as it gets for me, but it's pretty darn good and authentic tasting. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my story. I don't regret anything about my childhood. I actually believe that everything made me who I am today, and I just want to say I am proud to be Vietnamese American. It's made me who I am and who I am here today. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. Let me know if you end up making it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye! That's insane. Insanely delicious.